Okay, welcome back. Last week we talked about general C programs. We talked about including the standard input-output library. We talked about a printf statement and the new line special character. Today we're going to talk very briefly about variables, input, and output. So first we're going to talk about a very simple variable, and it is, let's use integer variable. Int is what it's called, and we're just going to call it my number. So now we have a little space in memory to store a single integer value. Now there are a number of variable types built into the C language. Int is for integers. There are doubles and floats for decimal numbers, char for individual characters, and we'll get into some of the more advanced types, but these are called primitive types. So my number is a container and its type is int, so you cannot put a decimal in that container. It won't fit. It's a round peg square hole kind of thing. So next thing we're going to do is assign a value to it. You can do it in the same line or in a different line. I'm going to do it in a different line just to demonstrate the different steps of it. Okay. And you could do these in the same line if you wanted, but we're going to do it like this. So at this point we have an integer variable called my number. We are assigning the value 42. It's like we're putting it into the container with this equal sign, which is the assignment operator. And now we're going to insert it into our output string. It works in C in a very interesting way. So within the string we're going to say my value is, and now we need to give it a signal to look for that value. So we're going to say %i, and that is, think of it like Mad Libs. We're going to insert it into that spot. After the quote, we got to tell the compiler the variable that we want to insert into the string. So at this point, it's going to take that value 42, which is stored in or assigned with the assignment operator, assigned to the variable my number, and now it's going to take the value, that variable my number's value, and insert it into the string, into the placeholder of the %i. So let's take a look. Okay, so as you can see, once again, we have created the variable called my number, which is of type int. We've assigned the value 42 to it, and then in our output string, we take the value that's inside of that container and we insert it into the string. And you see over here, my value is 42. Now, if I were to change that value, save it, and then we're going to have to recompile it. And now run it again. And in this case, my value is 999. Now, let's say that we want to involve some user input, because this is strictly talking about variable storage and output. To do user input, you first need to have a prompt. So a prompt is simply just some plain old output requesting input. Notice how I am not putting the new line character. And then we need to use what's called a scanf. Scanf statements read from the standard input stream, which in this case is the keyboard. You're going to be scanning into a string just like you would print, so it can do formatted input as well as formatted output. And what we're looking for is, as in our output, %i gives us an integer. And likewise, we put the variable we want to enter it into. But there's a catch. You got to put the ampersand, which is above the number 7, before the variable name, just for input. There's a good reason for that we're not going to get into today. We can eliminate this line because we're now assigning the value here in line number 8. So, once again, we create the variable of type int. We give the user a prompt. When the user inputs it, that variable of type integer gets inserted into the myNumber variable, and then the same exact output line. Save it, compile it, and run it. Enter a number, and it gives us the output. Enter a different number, and it gives us the output. So there you have it. We've learned how to create a variable of type int. We've learned how to insert the value of that variable into an output line, and we've learned how to use keyboard input to read from the standard input stream, to read user input from the keyboard into a single variable. Thank you very much, and happy coding. Have a great rest of the day.